Your enemies think they are getting away with everything. And sometimes, in your despair, you think so too. But in reality, that is not the case. You are simply looking at the most obvious things, forgetting to look at the deeper layer of what is unfolding. There is an invisible law that springs into action the very moment someone tries to break you. And this law requires no intervention from you. It does not need your revenge or your proof. It works quietly, profoundly, and unerringly, like the very breath of reality itself. The truth is, God always secretly punishes those who dare to harm His chosen ones. The Almighty simply does not act within the bounds of human logic, for He sees deeper than any of us ever could. The karmic strike of the higher powers is not swift. It operates on a more subtle level. First, those targeted begin to lose their inner stability, the very foundation upon which their confidence rests. Then come doubts they cannot explain and an anxiety that arrives without cause. Their decisions begin to lead into dead ends, even if they were once cunning and calculating. And the most remarkable part is that while everything may look normal on the outside, everything inside them is already collapsing. You might think that the punishment of your offenders should be loud and visible, but it happens differently. God does not act as people expect. He does not scatter signs or stage public retributions. His work is hidden from human eyes because it touches not just events, but the very soul of a person. The one who tried to wound you gradually begins to lose what they once considered their advantage. Their words lose their power, their influence wanes, and their confidence cracks from within. And they themselves do not understand exactly when it all began. But you know, because you were at the point where it was all set in motion. There is one more detail that almost no one notices. When someone tries to humiliate or betray you, it stirs not only pain within you but also an energy that you may not always recognize. If you do not transform it into anger and hurl it back, it stays with you and begins to work differently. It becomes a kind of signal that goes deeper than any words. This signal records the injustice, not so that you may take revenge, but so that balance can be restored. And this balance is never returned instantly. It is built back step by step. God does not simply return the same deed. He shows a person the consequences of their own internal state. And that is precisely why the lesson becomes so heavy for them. They cannot bypass it, they cannot hide, and they cannot justify themselves. Of course, you might wonder, why is this happening so slowly? Why does it feel like everything is dragging on, and justice is being delayed? But that is precisely the point. Swift punishment doesn't change a person, it only frightens them. What is actually happening goes much deeper. It shatters illusions, strips away masks, and deprives a person of their false sense of security. When all of this unfolds, they are left face to face with who they truly are. And it is at that very moment that the real reckoning begins. Chosen one, you must understand one vital thing. Your strength does not lie in proving a point or restoring justice with your own hands. Your strength lies in refusing to descend to the level where your enemies dwell. The moment you start playing by their rules, you step outside of the protection you have. When that happens, the process slows down or becomes distorted. But if you remain calm, even when things are difficult inside, you strengthen what has already been set in motion. You become part of a higher order, one that never makes a mistake. There is another sign that everything is going as it should, and that the Lord is secretly punishing your enemies. It is the moment when you truly stop caring, not in the sense of indifference, but in the sense of liberation. You stop replaying the situation in your mind. You stop returning to the words and actions of those who caused you pain. It is at this exact moment that a turning point occurs. Because you are no longer holding them in your energy field, everything that is meant to return to them begins to move faster. You are not obligated to witness their fall, and more often than not, you won't even see the full picture. But sometimes, life gives you a brief glimpse, as if pulling back the curtain. You see that things are not going as they planned. You hear of their troubles, their losses, or strange twists of fate. And inside you, there is no malice, Only a quiet understanding. It is working. It is already happening. Chosen one. The most remarkable thing about this mechanism is that it never delivers to the wrong address. It never punishes the innocent, and it never overlooks those who have truly crossed the line. However, it operates by its own laws, which do not always align with human logic. This is why it sometimes feels to you as though nothing is happening. But that is an illusion. The most vital processes are taking place where you cannot see. When they reach a breaking point, the changes finally become visible. Until then, everything may appear calm on the surface, but inside, your enemy's perception of reality begins to shift. They suddenly start seeing threats where none exist, and missing opportunities they once would have seized effortlessly. Their focus scatters, their decisions lose clarity, and their inner voice becomes a stranger, anxious and unfamiliar. This isn't fear in the usual sense. It is a disconnect between who they thought they were and who they truly are. And the wider this gap grows, the faster their confidence crumbles. You may notice them starting to act strangely, behaving in ways that were previously unlike them. These aren't just mistakes. They are glitches in their internal guidance system. They begin to say too much, revealing things they intended to hide, and trusting those who eventually turn against them. Every such action looks like an accident, but in reality, it is a chain reaction that can no longer be stopped. Their own steps become the cause of new hardships, and they themselves cannot understand why everything is going wrong. At this moment, one of the most hidden mechanisms, one that cannot be deceived, is triggered. It forces a person to face the consequences not from the outside, but from within. There is an even deeper layer to this. It is the moment when a person begins to lose touch with everything that once gave them energy and a sense of control. Their usual sources of strength stop working, as if someone has turned off the tap. Even if they retain their money, connections, or status, an emptiness emerges within that cannot be filled. They try to compensate with external actions, but every step only worsens their internal imbalance. At some point, they begin to realize that the problem isn't their circumstances. Yet they cannot admit this, because to do so would mean facing the truth about themselves. This is where the most unexpected turn begins. When a person reaches this state, they are faced with a choice they never even suspected. Either they acknowledge their mistake and begin to change, or they continue down the same path and accelerate their own destruction. If they choose the latter, the process intensifies tenfold. Their life begins to contract, as if the space around them is narrowing. Opportunities vanish, people drift away, and plans crumble. The strangest part is that they themselves become the cause of this constriction. Meanwhile, you may feel a new kind of stability growing within you. This isn't just calmness, it's a state where you begin to see more than you did before. You notice patterns that once seemed random, and you start to understand how everything is connected. Your intuition sharpens, and you begin to sense people on a much deeper level. This doesn't give you power over them, but it gives you clarity. And that clarity becomes your ultimate protection, because you no longer get drawn into the games that used to pull you in. When God secretly punishes someone, they suddenly encounter a situation where they lose total control. This is one of the most powerful moments, because it is then that the true essence of the situation is revealed. Everything that was hidden begins to surface. Their words lose their sting, their influence fails, and even those who once supported them begin to distance themselves. This isn't betrayal, it is a natural reaction to a shift in internal energy. People feel when the energy changes, even if they can't put it into words. There is one more detail you might notice if you are attentive. At some point, your enemies begin to think of you differently. The cold confidence they once had is replaced by an inexplicable tension. They may not consciously realize it, but on a primal level, they sense that you are not who they thought you were. This feeling throws them off balance. They can no longer predict your reactions or control the situation. And that, more than anything, makes them vulnerable. You might wonder if it's even worth paying attention to any of this. The answer is simple. You don't need to track their every move. Everything that matters is already happening, independent of your control. Yet, sometimes life shows you fragments so that you do not doubt. These might be chance encounters, news, or snatches of conversation that suddenly click together into a single picture. In those moments, you realize the process is moving forward, even if you cannot see its full depth. When you completely let go of the situation, a shift occurs that affects not only them, but you as well. You begin to receive what was previously blocked. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach suddenly become real. People who were never part of your life before begin to appear exactly when they are needed. This isn't a reward in the conventional sense. It is the restoration of a balance that was once disturbed. And the more gracefully you walk through this, the more powerful this effect becomes. Do not despair if at any point it feels as though your enemies are escaping retribution. Silence does not mean emptiness. Often, it hides the most precise unfolding of events. It is during these periods that your inner stability and your ability to avoid spiraling into doubt are tested. You look around and see no obvious consequences, but that is merely the surface. Beneath it, a far deeper process is at work. It may seem as though everything has stalled, but in reality, everything is being aligned with terrifying precision. The longer the wait, the more profound the result you will one day witness. Simply be patient and hold a firm belief that nothing passes without a trace, even if you cannot prove it right now. It is vital to understand that higher justice does not operate on the principle of instant reaction. It does not cater to emotions, nor does it seek to satisfy a craving for immediate punishment. Its purpose is deeper. It touches the very foundation of a person's actions. That is why consequences arrive not when you expect them, but when they become inevitable. And that moment can neither be cancelled nor bypassed. Understand that the fact you don't always see how retribution finds your offenders is in itself a form of protection for you. If you were to see every detail, a dangerous sense of satisfaction in another's pain might take root within you. This is a fine line, beyond which a person unknowingly begins to lose their own purity. At that point, they become part of the very cycle they are trying to escape. This is why you are not shown the full picture. It is not a deprivation. It is the preservation of your inner strength. There are moments when the truth is hidden not to make you suffer from uncertainty, but to allow you to remain above it all. Chosen one, you may not notice how a new capacity is forming within you. The ability to stop clinging to the mistakes of others. You are learning to let go, even when a trace of pain still lingers. It is precisely this that makes you unreachable to those who tried to hurt you. Because their actions no longer find resonance within you, they lose all power over you. Sometimes, the most powerful retribution occurs where there are no witnesses and no explanations. Chosen one, it may manifest as an inner void that a person cannot fill, or an anxiety they cannot escape. It might be a loss of meaning, where everything remains the same on the outside, but ceases to bring joy. Such things cannot be shown or proven to others, yet they are the very things that break a person most deeply. This is why you are not always permitted to see it happen. Remember, if you do not see a result, it does not mean it isn't there. It means it is taking shape at a level where ordinary sight cannot penetrate. At this stage, trust in the higher powers becomes your foundation. Not a blind faith, but a deep inner knowing that justice has already been set in motion. You may not understand its course, but that does not nullify its effect. And when everything finally comes to light, you will understand why it happened exactly this way and no other. Remain in clarity, even when it is difficult. Maintain your inner purity, even when you are provoked. And then, you will see how everything that is meant to happen unfolds without your interference, but with a precision that leaves no room for doubt.